Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to the Cybercrime Educational Series brought to you by PCmatic. Today's topic is the cold reality of tech support scams, one couple's journey. I'm Laura Baker with the Cyber Wyoming Alliance, and I'll be your host for this informative session. Please note that comments and questions will be monitored by Corey from PCmatic, and we'll answer those questions at the end. For over 25 years, PCmatic has created highly effective and easy to use cybersecurity solutions that protect consumers and organizations of all sizes from rapidly evolving cyber threats. To learn how PCmatic can help you, visit PCmatic.com. So let's get into tech support scams. Before we dive in, let's take a moment to understand exactly what we mean by tech support scams. These scams involve fraudsters pretending to be from reputable tech companies. They exploit fears about computer viruses and other digital threats to trick people into giving them money or access to their computers. As you can see, the nationwide statistics for all age groups is a little bit startling. These numbers are from the FBI's Internet Crimes Complaint Center, and this is just representative of people that actually knew to report the crime to the FBI. And there are a lot of people out there that don't know where to report a cyber crime. But if you look at the 60+ age group, they represent most of the complaints and most of the money lost. To help illustrate the seriousness of these scams and how to recognize them, we've invited a couple who encountered a tech support scam firsthand. So let's jump into their story. Mary and Jeff are a typical semi-retired company that live in Colorado. Jeff is retired law enforcement and Mary is retired from software development. And I want to thank both Jeff and Mary for being brave enough to come onto a national webinar and tell about their experience with the tech support scam. Mary and Jeff, would you please come on and tell us a little more about yourselves?
Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm the intended victim of this scam. Anyway, I've got law enforcement background. I wouldn't say I'm illiterate with computers, but I try to stay up with it, and I'm just thankful my wife was able to get me out of the possible problem with my computer.
And Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary. I worked in software engineering for 3 decades, and then after I left that, I started working part-time in cybersecurity and working with small businesses, and basically also full-time IT support to my entire extended family.
Awesome. That's a lot of experience. That's a lot of responsibility, Mary. I think that's funny. So it's my understanding that you took a video of what your computer looked like during the scam, and I thought maybe we could start by watching that, and just so everybody's on the exact same page. So let me share my screen again, and I will get that up. So just one moment, and okay, can you see my screen okay, Mary and Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is what we heard, and I'm going to turn up the volume so that the people at home can really hear what it said, and you can talk about the volume afterwards. So,
to unlock the computer, please call support immediately. Please do not attempt to shut down or restart your computer. Doing that may lead to data loss and identity theft. The computer lock is aimed to stop illegal activity. Please call our support immediately. Important security message. Your computer has been locked up. Your IP address was used without your knowledge or consent to visit websites that contains identity theft virus. To unlock the computer, please call support immediately. Please do not attempt to shut down or restart your computer. Doing that may lead to...
Okay, so I'm going to stop my share and come back to you. So Jeff, you said this was on your computer. What were the emotions going through your brain and your body as you actually saw this scary message?
Yes, this is Christmas Eve, early morning. It was nice and quiet, and I thought I'd visit Facebook and see what my friends were doing around the holidays. So I was just clicked on to just a regular post. It looked very innocent. Next thing I know, I started getting these alarms on my computer. So it was very startling. I was like, what I do? And, I didn't know if it was truly a scam or what I should do. Yeah, it was kind of panic. So I didn't know. And Mary was upstairs taking a shower at the time. And I thought, oh boy, I'm in trouble now. So I really didn't want to bother her, but I was pretty much stuck. And I did try to X out, which they told me not to do, and it just didn't, I don't know, it didn't do anything. It just kept going off and making a lot of noise.
Yeah, a lot of times on those windows, they'll disable the X. Mary, what was your perspective when you heard this from the other room?
Yeah, I was getting ready because we were going to go over to my family's house because we usually celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve. And I heard this noise and I immediately started running for his computer. And so when I got there, I was like, well, what did you do? He said, I just clicked on something. I'm like, okay. And what have you done since then? And he said, well, I tried to X out of it. So that made me more worried because I knew that this was probably just a scam to get somebody to call. But as soon as he clicked, I wasn't sure whether malware had gotten downloaded or not. So I took the video and just in case anybody needed to see it, Jeff had already taken a picture of it very wisely so that he could show anybody that needed to see it as what was happening. And then I unplugged the computer, hard shut it down, ran upstairs, pulled the plug to the modem, and then got dressed.
It was a little shocking on a couple different fronts.
Yes, it was a lot of, I turned everything off inside the house. I mean, every computer, all the phones, I just turned everything off, got dressed, and then said, okay, we're gonna go take a walk. So we left. We went and took like a 20-minute walk and then talked about it because, Jeff was still really worried what was happening to his computer, and I was, we didn't need to be touching it. We just needed to go and think about it and just try to get, some calm in. But that noise, all the noise, this is the first time I'd actually heard the noise that went with it because Jeff had his sound on. And it is pretty terrifying, all the alarms and everything else.
Yeah. And so, Jeff, coming back to the alarms and the beeping and the messages going, bigger and smaller, and then the line at the bottom, what emotions specifically do you feel it brought up in you and what reactions were you fighting? What were you reacting to? Tell us a little bit more about that when you first saw it.
Well, the alarms were definitely disturbing, and I was very confused what I should do. So it creates a panic. It feels like I'm panicking over it. I read over it. It said call support, but I didn't want to do that. And I was just what I do next. And I was kind of in limbo what to do. And, I thought, oh, well, I've probably lost this computer and hopefully it's going to be trash. And that's the extent of it. So that was going through my mind, but I was waiting, I knew Mary could, do something or let me know for sure if we could salvage my computer, and hopefully they didn't get into my accounts. So yeah, I was very, very upset, and I was surprised that a simple link that was on Facebook, I guess it could have been anywhere, but it just it wasn't an ad that I knew of, but it looked very innocent, and it took me from being very relaxed state to sheer panic, So that's the state of my emotions at that time.
Well, and I think you told me earlier, Jeff, that that the Facebook, it just looked like a normal post, what you clicked on.
Yes, it did. It just looked like something, you know, I was looking for friends' posts and things like that. So yeah, it looked very normal. I mean, it didn't look like anything, like a true ad, So it was possibly disguised as a regular post and just want to read more information about it. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, and I think that's interesting. You just mentioned that, you knew not to click on ads, right? But
Yes.
this looked so normal that, and it did not look like an ad that could cause this kind of panic and upset and distress. So I think that's a really good point to let people at home know that, they can disguise the ads or the post to look like whatever they want. Which is definitely some of the ways they get us with social media, especially. So tell me a little bit. These are very typical feelings, by the way. The panic, the upset, the stress, the worry that you're going to lose your computer, or that you're going to lose your pictures on your computer and your files, and that they might get into your bank accounts through your computer. And so what they try to do is they try to get you out of that critical thinking brain and into your reactive brain. And so all those feelings make you more reactive and less thinking. And so, obviously the video looked really serious. Alarms and sounds were going off. And so I love that you went for a walk. And tell us about what happened on that walk as you were, walking around the block for 20 minutes and talking. Tell us about what you talked about and how you were able to get back into that critical thinking brain.
Sure. Well, first of all, I explained to him why, the actions that I took, the fact that, we turned it off, that there's no connection now to the internet. There wouldn't be anything more that they could do at this moment in time. So, just to allay his fear that we had to do something right now, right? I'm like, we don't have, people live thousands of years without internet. We will be okay if we don't have internet for a couple of hours. And so, we talked about that. We talked about how, it was really scary with the noise and the sound and those kind of things. You see, we've seen blog posts and we've seen other things about these tech scams, but this is the first time I'd seen one where I could see it in full operation, and I could see that they really worked hard to get you very excited about it. So, we mostly talked about that, and then we talked about, what we're going to do for Christmas Eve, just to get our minds off of it.
Okay, so after you had this talk, Jeff, and you're walking, how did you feel compared to the stress that you felt when you first saw the tech support scam? How did you feel?
Well, I think the walk was very helpful. Just got me out of this place of just away from the computer. I was to the point where I said, well, maybe I lost a lot of things. It's too late now, and we'll see when we get back if we can salvage this. So yeah, it was needed. Just take a break and kind of walk away from it. The damage was already done as far as I was concerned at that point. So and having confidence in somebody that's more tech savvy, that's definitely a reassurance. So I didn't feel a need to call that number that says it's a Microsoft support team or whatever it is. And that was probably the best thing to do, just walk away. So I wouldn't be tempted to call anybody other than allow Mary to help me with it.
Yeah. And so Mary was your backup. She's got a background in software development and some cybersecurity as well. So what advice would both of you give if you didn't have a Mary and you lived alone?
I would need to call somebody other than what they're advertising. If if a business was open. I mean, that was around the holidays. So I definitely had to call somebody with more experience than me. And that's one reason I took the picture, so I could actually show them what, whoever was going to help me, show them what I was facing, and the, the picture of it, might have helped them in some way. I totally expected the computer just to be totally wiped out. So that's why I took the picture. So yeah, calling somebody else, it's always better to call someone else before you, professional, as they say. So that would be my advice.
Well, and we checked, and that is definitely not the Microsoft phone number. But we actually checked the Microsoft Contact Us page and their support page, and they don't have an 800 number on their page. They don't have a phone number, period. You connect them through the internet. So, whenever a big clue would be, if you see the phone number from a large reputable tech company that you may or may not have a relationship with, it probably is fake, just because because they're advertising the phone number in the scam. Mary, Jeff talked about, what advice he would give for those that don't have a Mary and maybe live alone. What advice would you give for people that don't have a Mary and maybe live alone?
Well, I get this a lot, because remember, I'm the IT support for my extended family, which also means all their friends too. So my mom has been scammed before, and so basically what I've talked to her about, if you work in cybersecurity, nobody in your family gets away with just, they all now know, right, that what's going on and what to do. So my mom actually has her and her friends call each other, right, when they see something, or they call me, but and I'm always available too. But typically now they just call each other if they get an email and it doesn't sound right, or they get a phone call. They'll call each other and talk through it. And so that is pretty much what I've been telling my family and my mom's friends is, find a buddy and make sure you call somebody, no matter what it is, just call. And that at least will give them a few moments away from the computer, and also to get a chance to calm down.
Well, and at Cyber Wyoming Alliance, we actually encourage people to find a cyber buddy. In the past, they had a campaign going on about don't text and drive. So make a pact with a friend, verbally, in person, whatever, that you're not going to text and drive, and it will keep you more accountable. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the cyber buddy. Make a pact with your cyber buddy, with a friend, and say, I will not give out my personal information, violate my gut instinct online about an online scam, and I will not give out my my user ID and password without talking to my cyber buddy first. And that's a great pact to make with friends. So it sounds like your mom's already done that. Yeah. And that's pretty cool. And maybe, the I will not let a stranger onto my computer is also a really good a really good pact to make with your cyber buddy. A lot of times the hackers will, really up that emotion as they don't tell anybody, and as you experience, Jeff, you're going to lose everything on your computer. And so let's get back to that. Did you lose anything on your computer?
No, I didn't lose anything. Just thankfully, yeah, it all worked out.
Yeah. So tell us how you recovered your computer. So you turned everything off in the house, all the internet related stuff. You turned it all off in the house, and you unplugged your cable modem. How did you come back online, and how did you clean your computer?
So shall I take this?
Yeah,
Since I did it.
Yes.
Since I did it. So at that point, I didn't trust anything. I certainly didn't want anything infecting the rest of our equipment. We have a lot of tech equipment, or at least I do. And so I used my phone, because my phone gets updated, constantly, and I felt more secure with my phone. And so using my cell signal, I turned it into a hotspot and connected Jeff's phone computer to that. So it still wasn't connecting to the internet. It was only connecting to my phone. The worst thing that would have happened is his phone potentially could have been, his computer could have infected my phone. So using that, then I brought up his antivirus. I checked it needed to be updated. So, you know, using the hotspot, we downloaded what we needed to download, got everything set up, and then we did a deep scan on it. And at that point, we still walked away from the computer. We still had stuff to do for Christmas Eve. I still had some dishes I had to take over. I was like, no one's touching internet in this house until we have this deep scan and we make sure that nothing's going on with Jeff's computer. So we actually didn't come back to it until the next day on Christmas. I came back, checked the deep scan, ran it again just in case. I didn't trust anything. Once that happened, once the scan showed that everything was okay, we checked his bank accounts and everything seemed to be all right, then, you know, then I started gradually adding more and more things to the internet, seeing what was going to happen and so on. And so that's how we recovered, was slowly, very slowly. I wasn't in a rush. I mean, you know, really, people can't survive without the internet.
Well, and I liked what you said. People have survived without the internet for 2,000 years. We can survive for a few days. I think that's a really good perspective on it. Now, Jeff had, you know, Jeff has a Mary, but if you live alone, what advice would you give to somebody in the audience that had the same thing happen? How would they protect their computers? How would they protect their other devices that are internet capable in their home? And who would they go to?
Yeah, well, you know, if you've got a friend who, you know, works in the industry, and a lot of people do these days, and so, you know, that might be a good person to reach out to. And then, you know, especially if it's around a holiday, you know, we weren't going to be able to get a hold of a store or anything like that. But one of the things, you know, my mom and her friends know is they all have antivirus. You know, there are phone numbers published typically for those antivirus companies. And so, you know, to call them. Now, one of the things somebody told us is be careful when you search online, because it's usually what we tell people, don't call the number that's on the screen, you know, go and research it, but don't call the number that's in an ad, because it might be part of that same scam. So you have to go down in Google, down below all the ads, and then call your antivirus. That would be one. You know, if if it's not a holiday, you know, there are computer repair shops, there's Cyber Wyoming, the AARP has it's not 24-hour, but the AARP has a phone number that they publish on their website. So, you know, there's other places you can go.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you know, if you can live without the internet over Christmas, there's always Monday where you can, you know, take the computer to a local repair store. And ask them to do a scan for you on that. And I guess the other thing is, if Jeff said you were worried about your bank accounts, you could probably call your bank. Most of them are open 24/7, even on the holidays, with at least a general help desk that can check and make sure that your bank account hasn't been breached. And that's always a good thing to check too. So I would say local and in person instead of even calling, but it is a good point. Your antivirus software probably has an 800 number that you can call. Maybe a good idea would be to write it down ahead of time. And Jeff, you had some really good advice for people. Like, we tell people not to put a password on a Post-it note on their monitor, because that's obviously not safe, but anybody can see it. But you had some really good advice when we were talking earlier before this webinar about what you might want to put on a Post-it note to allay the emotions that you were having when you saw this tech support scam. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. If Mary wasn't here, this is, you know, if somebody doesn't have a Mary or have anybody able to help, you know, do your research and basically have a plan of action and just put it on a sticky note. You know, maybe the phone number to your antivirus software, or a friend that's knowledgeable, and that would help calm you down when you're hearing all the noise, all the bells and whistles, and that was really loud. And I don't usually have my volume on my computer turned up, so I don't know if they were able to turn it up or what, but it was definitely a loud, just causing more panic. So if I had a note to look at least I can, you know, just same as in law enforcement, we always had a plan so you could stay focused and you don't get emotional. So you know the protocol and what you do, so that takes emotion out of the situation. And that would be a great plan. That'd be a great option.
So let's talk about what we should put on that sticky note. I love the phone number of somebody that you trust, already there. But what to do with your computer right away? I mean, Mary immediately turned it off and unplugged it from the internet. So, you know, what other things, including turning off the computer or unplugging it from the internet, might also add to that Post-it note? So do a 1, 2, and 3 for me of the top 3 things you might put on that Post-it note. Even if we're reviewing, it's an important point.
Probably the first thing would be, and you can grade me by this, I'd probably, after watching Mary, I'd run to the modem and unplug that first, probably. And, you know, and that would be my first step. Yeah, from there, turn the computer off. That would probably, you know, and then call a friend or somebody that could help me and give me the advice I need. What should I do next? Because, you know, pretty much stop the damage, I believe, if I disconnect the modem. And switching everything, like Mary was talking about, switching her phone and making her phone a modem would, yeah, if I needed to do other work on my phone or something else. So,
I like that. I love turning off the modem, because if they did actually gain access to your computer and you're worried about your bank accounts, they won't be able to get to it through your computer unless they were able to, you know, steal some user credentials off your computer. But they won't be able to get to it through your computer if you have your password saved on your computer and that's what they're using. So that's really, really good. I like that idea. That's a great idea. And then, you know, maybe the 4th one would be call the bank, just to make sure. Yeah, I like that. Mary, do you have anything to add to that, or do you think Jeff summed it up pretty well?
I think Jeff summed it up. The only thing is that I don't know if everybody knows that you can turn off a computer anytime and it is not going to explode, smoke, turn into fire, anything like that. But by turning it off, we actually mean a hard turn off. Like, you hold down that power key until it goes off. I think sometimes when we say we turn it off, sometimes people just close the laptop lid. And so I just wanted to make sure that people understood. We're talking about seriously turning it off. You're not going to damage anything by doing that. So.
And that is a really good point, because when you close the laptop lid, the screen goes dark and you think you're turning it off, but you're not actually turning it off. So right. Very good point, Mary. Yeah, you need to press the button to turn it off and hold it down sometimes so it'll go down. And or maybe go, if you're on Windows, go to start and shut down. Yeah. Okay. Good. Excellent. So let's talk about what you think would have happened had you called that number and engaged with the scam. Mary and Jeff, do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I know that was one of your big fears, that other people might actually engage with this scam, or that maybe this fear and urgency would have, you know, tricked you into engaging with the scam.
Yeah, I'm sure that if I called the number, which is very tempting, I'd almost like to want to go to a payphone and call that number, see who answers it. But, you know, at the time, if I'd have called the number, they would probably, you know, they had my phone number then. Maybe they could hack into my phone, start sending me texts and things like that, or they'd know my address. Not that, I don't know if that means anything to them, but they'd have more information on me. I'm sure I'd be on a list. My phone number would be on a list after that. you know, if the guy was really persuasive and I was willing to hand everything over to him, he could have talked me into giving him access to my computer, and that would have definitely been an issue. I mean, that would have been the ultimate for him, because he would have control of my computer, him or her, whoever it is. So yeah, that's what could have happened. You know, they could have just downloaded more spyware or whatever, and then they'd have everything.
Yeah.
So that would be my fear. And I guess, you know, maybe I'd panic afterwards, and then I'd start changing all my passwords, and they would have all my passwords. You know, there's all kind of things that could happen with that.
Mary, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's actually sounds pretty right, because my mom, not a tech support one, but it was had to do with her Google suite. It was very similar. She called the number. They said they needed to get into her computer in order to fix it. They also insisted she give them $700 for the privilege of being scammed. And that's pretty much what happened. The only thing they didn't do is they didn't get into her bank accounts. But they did charge her the $700, and who knows what they put on that computer. That computer is long gone now. After I found out about it, I made sure that computer was gone.
Mm-hmm. So Jeff, I know that as a result of this experience, you changed one habit and you decided to get a password manager. Can you tell me a little bit about, you know, obviously this is part of the reason why, but were there other reasons that you chose to start using a password manager? And can you tell me a little bit about that learning process and how you like it today after you've gotten used to it?
Yes, that was Mary again. So that was her idea, and it was a great idea. At first, I was reluctant. You know, I have my password book, you know, and I have all my passwords, and I change them on a regular basis, but they're always in the house. You know, someone could grab them, I guess, if they broke in the house. But anyway, at first it was a pain, just, you know, starting something new and putting all my passwords in the account. But it's so much easier now. So if I want to go to the bank, you know, I can log into the password account first and just click, and it fills in all the information, the password, the user number, and you know, it verifies who I am. So you know, and then if I want to switch to Amazon or switch to go somewhere else, it's always I feel more protected with that, and it's so much easier than yeah, one button at a time, putting my password in. So yeah, it's a lot quicker. But at first it was a different habit, and it took me a while to get to appreciate it. But I definitely recommend it to everyone.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. Were there any other habits besides the password manager that you changed after experiencing this, or that you became a little more security aware, or was it mostly just the password manager?
I was leery of Facebook, and I stayed off it for a while. I didn't take any friend requests, you know, anything like that. Yeah, so that's kind of, you know, I just kind of like, okay, I'm just gonna not click on anything for a while, and yeah, just observe Facebook and not participate in it. So I think that's my main habit, is, you know, changing all my passwords, especially after this event, just in case. And yeah, so
Great.
everything's good now.
That's great. Awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to add just to the audience at home about, you know, the emotions and the fear and the experience that you had with this, just to reassure others that might have also been victims of this tech support scam, and to talk to them? What would you like to say to them?
Well, you know, it can happen to anybody, and not to be afraid, or afraid to call somebody and ask for help, because it's embarrassing, you know, because, you know, Mary was upstairs. So I'm looking at what it's, you know, the buttons you can click. You can hit the cancel, the OK, I went all the way up to the X and I clicked on it. Didn't really do anything, but I mean, one of those other buttons could have really done some damage. So, you know, having some kind of plan would relieve that fear, because, you know, once we're in a state of fear, we're just trying to react. We're trying to escape this situation. So, yeah, it's just trying to use your logical mind and, you know, after, you know, lock everything down, like we said, you know, unplug the modem and go for a walk, or you know, call your friend, tell them what happened. So I did like the idea of taking the picture, because then if I had some explained, you know, if it did wipe it completely out, maybe a shop would have had some kind of understanding what kind of virus this was. But yeah, just get out of this fear. I mean, what's the biggest thing is, you know, maybe you lose your computer or something like that. But yeah, it's trying to get out of the fear state, having a plan and a plan of action, and just go by the plan.
Great advice. Mary, do you want to add anything to that about, for anybody that might have experienced these same emotions in a tech support scam at home?
I'd say make friends with people who work in computers. So you have somebody to call. We're really nice people. So make friends.
Join our Facebook page.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you know, you know, there's places that you can prepare, you know, like you can, the more you understand about this, I mean, people are here at this webinar, which is great. So you're obviously interested in finding out about this kind of stuff. You know, like Cyber Wyoming has, you know, something called a Hacker's Brief they send out every week about different scams and stuff like that. But the more you know, the more calm you're going to be in these kind of situations, because you're going to know the next time, you know, if this ever happens to you or happens to a friend of yours, you're going to be like, oh, that's fine. You know, just, you know, let's just turn the computer off. Let's unplug the modem. You know, everything, you know, it's all going to be fine. We'll figure this out together.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again, and there we go. And we'll move on. And Mary and Jeff are more than willing to answer questions at the end, and Corey will be reading those. So keep those questions for just another minute or two, and we'll get to them. So as we saw what happened with Jeff's computer, tech support scammers often use these fear tactics, like the sirens or the urgent messages and the alarm. And this makes victims take immediate action. And Jeff even said he was tempted to take this immediate action. So some other common tactics that I employ, following Mary's advice of getting to know what types of scams are out there and what types of tactics they use. Typical tech support scam tactics are impersonating legitimate companies. You saw on this screen print that they were impersonating Microsoft. It wasn't really Microsoft. They spoof caller IDs and websites and online ads. You heard Jeff say that he wasn't clicking on an ad in Facebook. He knew he wasn't supposed to click on ads in Facebook, but it didn't look like an ad. And it looked like an innocuous post that he wanted to read more about. They exploit your trust and your fear. And then they offer unrealistic solutions or services. So these are the common tactics that they use. And just as a reminder, if you do decide to Google and try to find the real phone number, notice that this one says it's the Microsoft Support Call Center 24-hour helpline, but it's not going to Microsoft. It's going to, it's a sponsored ad, and just about anyone can buy it. And PCmatic actually asked us to show that why there's not a PCmatic phone number. It actually has one. They actually post, because they're a responsible company, about why they do not have a phone number to call. And it's partially because of these types of impersonators. And so it's very important to make sure that you look at the actual website's contact us page if you need to contact that tech support company. And what you can do to protect yourself. I loved the Post-it note idea. It was such a good idea. Have that plan of action on a Post-it note on your monitor that says, turn off your cable modem, turn off your computer, make sure it's not just closed, but turn it off. And then call a trusted person that you know of in advance. But there's other ways too. Mary mentioned staying informed about common scam tactics, like attending the cybercrime support series or webinar series by PCmatic. Never sharing personal or financial information with unsolicited callers. Tech support scams sometimes come by phone as well. They're not always on the computer. Verify the legitimacy of requests for remote access. So here's the rule of thumb. Never share your computer with a stranger. If you don't know them, you wouldn't let them into your house. So don't let them into your computer. And then trust your instincts and seek that second opinion. Use that spidey sense. It's the best thing to follow, and make sure you have that cyber buddy to talk to in case that spidey sense goes off about something that you're uncomfortable with. And fortunately, there are organizations like the Federal Trade Commission, the FBI, the Better Business Bureau, and AARP that provide valuable resources and support for victims of tech support scams. AARP and the Better Business Bureau, along with just a general Google search, can help you determine if what you're experiencing is a scam. So get out your phone if your computer starts going off and research it. I like the AARP Fraud Watch Network because you can actually call them, and this is their real number. And I program the Better Business Bureau site into my phone so I can instantly research to see if a business is legitimate or not. So these are two things that you could program into your phone: the 800 number for the Fraud Watch Network and the Better Business Bureau site to search for a legitimate business. There are also lots of ways to report a scam. If you've lost money, be sure to report to local law enforcement and your bank and the FBI. Call and be that squeaky wheel. Report it online and then call. Sometimes they can stop funds transfers if you act fast enough. If you didn't lose money, but you want to report the scam so that other people will know about it and you're protecting them, consider sending it to the Cyber Wyoming Alliance and signing up for our Hackers Brief, which Mary mentioned. It's a weekly redacted publication. We protect your identity, and it's of scams reported by individuals like you. It's free. And if it's a government impersonation scam, be sure to inform the IRS, the Social Security Agency, the Postmaster General, and the Federal Trade Commission, the Medicare office, whomever who is being impersonated. Be sure to notify them. And finally, if you're a victim of a scam, you can get help from identitytheft.gov and the AARP Fraud Watch Network, and often your state's Attorney General as well. So now it's time to hear from you. We'll open the floor to any questions or concerns that you may have about tech support scams or online security in general. And Mary and Jeff will be here to answer, as well as the rest of the panels. Corey is going to read some of the questions for us to discuss.
Great stuff, Laura and Jeff and Mary. We've got 3 or 4 questions already and more to come here. The first one, and this looks like it's directed towards Jeff. It says, given your background in law enforcement, did you have any inclination to contact law enforcement after this happened? Or if you did feel that inclination, do you feel like they would have been able to help?
Well, I have Mary, so Cyber Wyoming definitely helps me quite a bit. If I would have lost money, but I was fortunate, because if I would have went through the phone number, it could have really turned really bad. So I'm always skeptical, being former law enforcement, so that kind of protected me in that way. So there was no loss. I lost my time. We've lost, but as far as money wise, I didn't lose any money. So I didn't feel like, law enforcement could have done anything. I just didn't want to, call them. It'd be sort of like a waste of time unless I would have lost money.
Can I add something to that, Laura?
Sure,
So,
of course.
one of the things that I do, particularly if people tell me that they have lost money, I had some neighbors who had gotten scammed and they were mentioning to me, and I was like, you need to call the FBI. Call the FBI right now. Call the FBI. And they were like, well, they don't care. It's not that much money. I'm like, no, call the FBI. Call the FBI. And so I basically twisted their arm. They called the FBI. And at first, the FBI was like, well, it's not enough money for us to get involved. But then my neighbors got kind of became that squeaky wheel that you mentioned, and they kind of really twisted their arms about it. They actually got some of the money back. The FBI actually caught the person. They were in the US, caught the person. They're actually going to be going on trial here in a couple of months, and they got some of the money back. So if there's, it's good if there isn't a loss to let people like Cyber Wyoming know, or PCmatic or whatever it is, so that other people can be informed of it. But if there's any loss at all, don't be shy. Definitely call your, local law enforcement, FBI, whoever you need to. Make sure that they know that this is happening.
And I know local law enforcement is starting to encourage being called. I mean, I was just talking to the sheriff of our county at a fundraiser the other day, and I asked him, I said, are you getting a lot more calls? And he said, oh, yes. And I'm so glad, because people don't realize that, if somebody breaks into their car and steals something, they always think about calling us. But they don't think about if somebody breaks into their computer, they're also stealing something.
Yeah.
And that it is a violation of the law. And he said, of course they should be calling us. He said, some of the smaller law enforcement agencies across the nation may not have that type of digital forensics skill set, but they know who to call that does, and they'll pull them in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do we have another question, Corey?
We do, and I think this one is interesting given the fact we've talked a lot about feelings and emotions as it relates to this. The question is, Jeff and Mary, do you feel like you would have responded differently if this wasn't Christmas Eve?
Oh, that's a good question. What do you think?
I'm not sure. I would say, yeah, I turned it over to Mary. So yeah, it wasn't much action for me, but other than panic and those emotions. But
I think that's a really good question. I think simply because, this is something, even when I worked in software engineering, I worked with computers all the time. There's very little that a computer does that scares me at this point. However, I do know that for other people, holidays, emotions are already ramped up. You're getting, this could have been really bad for somebody who, was really looking forward to going to their family and knowing that most everything is closed already, and then this happens. And so it's possible that the tendency might have been more to call that phone number simply because you didn't feel like you had any other options, and you really wanted it to be over and done with quickly so you could get to whatever the festivity was or wherever you were going, or you didn't want to even think about it on Christmas Eve. So I think that's a really good question.
yeah, I thought it was odd they did it on Christmas Eve when, we're supposed to be visiting family and things like that. What if, I don't know, maybe an elderly person would have reached out just because they were lonely and called that number? Yeah, there's a reason they do it on the holidays. So who knows? We were, like I said, I was very fortunate.
I think you're right that there is a reason they do it on the holidays. It's because, a lot of tech support companies are closed, and you're in a rush, and you might also have heightened emotions, because it's usually family time. So I do think that it is very strategic that they put this out on Christmas Eve, and it should not be discounted. Holidays are predominantly, you'll see more scams, and it's just for those reasons that Mary and Jeff were talking about. Corey, do we have another question?
We've got at least one more here, and this one is for Mary. Given this experience, have you changed the advice that you give friends and family as they turn to you for guidance, given this experience?
Yeah, so I think I've spent more time telling people about turning off the computer because, you know, before, you know, I might have more talked about, you know, here's possibly these scams, you know, don't call a phone number or something like that. But this is the first time I realized that maybe I really need to tell people that they can give them permission to turn the computer off. Because for whatever reason, people, especially people who are not very technical, they're really scared that they're going to damage their computer by turning it off, you know, while it's running. And I don't know if this has to go with cars, like people know better than to like put it in reverse when you're driving, or, you know, or to turn it off while you're driving. I don't know if they don't work like cars. You really can turn it off. And so that's a great question. Thank you. And yeah, it does remind me, I have been spending a lot more time telling people, just turn it off and go and call somebody, or think about it, or take a break, whatever it is.
Any other questions, Corey?
The last one we have here, looks like this one is going to Jeff about maybe aside from his conversations with Mary, had you had any previous type of cybersecurity awareness training prior to this event?
Years ago, yeah, I was with the Department of Justice, and one of the HR people had taken a computer to a meeting or something, and it was in a public place, and they forgot their computer, and it was like taken. Someone took their computer, so they had everybody's social security numbers and date of birth and all that. So I understood the importance of security, especially hardware, but software, yes, I'm familiar with, you know, good passwords, and we always improve, but it's constantly changing. And, you know, I've been retired for like over 10 years, so things have totally changed since I was in law enforcement. And but yeah, this is a wake-up call. I think I was very fortunate, and I think it's a wake-up call for everyone that we need to be aware of this and learn from other people's experiences, so we can protect ourselves.
Great.
Laura,
No other questions, Corey? Oh, go ahead, Mary.
One other thing I wanted to add, it came to me while you were talking about the phone numbers, you know, in your slide. And one of the things that, I mean, you can always call. There are two places that are always open 24 hours that at least you'd have somebody to talk to, but they may not be able to help that much. Your credit card company and your bank. You were right. I mean, you mentioned the bank. You know, there's usually somebody, you can get a hold of somebody 24 hours, no matter the holiday. And when my mom had a friend who was scammed, it was actually the bank who talked her out of doing anything worse. And so those are two things to keep in mind as well, that, you know, if you really can't find anybody else to call a credit card company. What the heck, right? They're going to pick up, talk to them.
And you can always, you know, if you feel like it's not a law enforcement emergency, you could always call the non-emergency number for law enforcement in your community, and they're also open. Their dispatchers will take that.
Mm-hmm.
And they may just tell you, we'll call your bank, but at the same time, at least you will be talking it out with somebody else too. So,
right.
Yeah, that's great suggestions, Mary. I love that. Corey, are there any other questions?
Not seeing any, but plenty of statements of appreciation and comments of appreciation for what Jeff and Mary have shared today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff and Mary. I want to thank our audience for joining us, and Jeff and Mary for sharing your story. It's very brave of you to come on a national webinar to talk about it, and I certainly do appreciate it, and I know that PCmatic does as well. And I want to thank PCmatic for sponsoring this webinar. PCmatic is passionate about protecting you from everyday cybercrime, so watch for more webinars like this. And remember that staying informed and vigilant, as well as talking to a trusted friend or family member when you get that uncomfortable feeling, are keys to protecting yourself against these tech support scams. Thank you once again for being part of today's webinar. Stay safe, stay informed, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.